In the year 2147, humanity had spread across the stars. People lived on planets far from Earth, exploring new worlds and building colonies. One of these planets was called Kepler-62. It was a beautiful place with thick forests, sparkling rivers, and mountains covered in mist. To many, it seemed like paradise. But there was something strange about this planet, something no one could explain. At the edge of a vast jungle, a group of scientists worked at a small research outpost. They were there to study the planet's environment and look for signs of life. Among them was Rachel Brooks, a young astrophysicist with a sharp mind and a restless spirit. She loved solving puzzles, especially ones that involved space. Her days were filled with analyzing data, running experiments, and staring at the stars through telescopes. But lately, she felt like something was missing, a bigger mystery waiting to be uncovered. One evening, as Rachel sat in the lab reviewing readings from the day, something unusual caught her attention. The equipment had picked up a strange signal coming from deep within the jungle. It wasn't random noise. It was rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The pulses repeated every few seconds, steady and deliberate. At first, Rachel thought it might be interference from the outpost machines or even an error in the system. But when she checked the data again, she realized it was real. Whatever it was out there, and it was intelligent. Rachel shared her findings with Daniel Carter, another scientist at the outpost. Daniel was older and more cautious than Rachel. He had seen too many false alarms over the years to get excited easily. It could just be some natural phenomenon, he said, leaning back in his chair. We don't know enough about this planet yet. But Rachel wasn't convinced. Natural phenomena don't send signals like this, she replied, pointing at the screen. This is deliberate. Someone, or something, is trying to communicate. The idea sent a shiver down her spine. If the signal really came from an intelligent source, it would mean they weren't alone on Kepler-62. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. What if it was hostile? What if it wasn't even human? Despite Daniel's warnings, Rachel couldn't ignore the signal. She spent hours poring over the data, trying to pinpoint its exact location. Finally, she managed to trace it to a remote part of the jungle, miles away from the outpost. The area was uncharted territory, full of dense vegetation and unknown dangers. No one had ever ventured that far before. Rachel knew she had to investigate. She gathered a small team to join her. Emily Dawson, a botanist who knew the local plant life better than anyone. Lucas King, an engineer skilled at fixing anything that broke. And San Hayes, a security officer trained to handle threats. Each member brought something valuable to the mission, but none of them truly understood what they were getting into. As they prepared for the journey, Rachel felt a mix of excitement and fear. She didn't know what awaited them in the jungle, but she was determined to find out. The signal was more than just a scientific curiosity. It was a call she couldn't ignore. And deep down, she hoped it would lead to answers about the universe, and maybe even herself. When the team set off the next morning, the jungle loomed ahead like a living wall. Strange sounds echoed around them, bird calls, rustling leaves, and distant growls. The air was thick with humidity, making every step feel heavier than the last. But Rachel kept moving forward, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, the signal pulsed steadily, drawing her closer with each passing moment. The journey into the jungle was harder than anyone had expected. The trees were tall and close together, their thick branches blocking out most of the sunlight. Vines hung down like curtains, tangling around the team's legs as they walked. Every step required effort, and the humid air made it hard to breathe. Rachel Brooks led the group, her eyes scanning the dense forest for any sign of danger or clues about the mysterious signal. Behind her, Emily Dawson carefully studied the plants they passed, noting how different they were from anything on Earth. Lucas King carried a heavy pack filled with tools and supplies, while San Hayes stayed alert, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. As they moved deeper into the jungle, strange things began to happen. The compasses they brought stopped working, spinning wildly in every direction. "This doesn't make sense," Lucas muttered, shaking his device. "There's no reason for them to malfunction unless—" He trailed off, unsure of what to say. Rachel glanced at him, but didn't respond. She felt uneasy too, though she tried not to show it. The silence around them was unnatural. There were no bird calls, no rustling leaves, no signs of animal life. It was as if the jungle itself was holding its breath. After hours of walking, they reached a clearing. In the center stood something that took their breath away. A massive structure half buried in the ground. It shimmered faintly, its surface smooth and metallic, yet it didn't reflect light the way normal metal would. Instead, it seemed to absorb it, giving off a soft glow. The team froze, staring at the object in awe. None of them had ever seen anything like it. "What is this?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "It looks alien." Before anyone could answer, movement caught their attention. Figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, stepping into the clearing. They were tall and slender, their skin almost translucent, glowing faintly in the dim light. Their large, luminous eyes watched the humans silently. For a moment, no one moved. The tension was thick, like a storm about to break. Rachel stepped forward cautiously, her heart pounding. She raised her hand slowly, palm open, in a gesture of peace. To her surprise, one of the figures mirrored her action, extending its own hand toward her. The connection was immediate, not physical, but emotional. A wave of calm washed over Rachel, replacing her fear with curiosity. She turned to look at her team, who still seemed unsure. "They're not here to hurt us," she said softly. "I think they want to talk." Sam tightened his grip on his weapon, but didn't raise it. "We don't know that for sure," he said, his voice low. "We should be careful." Lucas nodded in agreement, keeping his distance from the newcomers. Only Emily seemed intrigued, her scientific curiosity outweighing her caution. She knelt down to examine the ground near the figures, noticing faint impressions where their feet touched the earth. The aliens didn't speak in words, at least not ones the humans could understand. Instead, they communicated through melodic hums that resonated in the air. The sounds were soothing, almost musical, and seemed to carry meaning beyond language. Rachel closed her eyes, trying to focus on the emotions behind the tones. She sensed curiosity, patience, and perhaps even hope. These beings weren't hostile. They were waiting to see what the humans would do next. Despite the peaceful interaction, questions swirled in Rachel's mind. Why had the aliens chosen this moment to reveal themselves? What did they want? And why had the signal led them here? As she looked at the shimmering structure behind the figures, she realized they were standing at the edge of something far greater than they could imagine. The answers lay within that mysterious building, and whatever secrets it held, they were meant for humanity to discover. With a deep breath, Rachel motioned for her team to follow her closer to the structure. The aliens stepped aside, allowing them to approach. Each step felt heavier now, not because of the terrain, but because of the weight of the unknown. Whatever waited inside, Rachel knew, would change everything, for better or worse. The team stood at the entrance of the shimmering structure, their breaths visible in the cool air despite the jungle's humidity. The surface of the building seemed to shift slightly, as if it were alive, responding to their presence. Rachel hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside, her boots making no sound on the smooth metallic floor. The others followed closely, their eyes wide with wonder and unease. Inside, the space was vast and open, filled with soft, glowing light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Strange shapes floated in the air, holograms, Rachel guessed, showing images of stars, planets, and galaxies. Some of the displays looked like maps, while others resembled timelines, though none of them made immediate sense. In the center of the room was a platform, raised slightly off the ground, with symbols etched into its surface. The symbols pulsed faintly, matching the rhythm of the signal they had been tracking. The aliens moved gracefully around the humans, their movements fluid and deliberate. They didn't speak but continued to hum softly, the sound filling the chamber like a gentle breeze. One of the figures approached Rachel, standing close enough for her to see the intricate patterns beneath its translucent skin. It reached out, touching her shoulder lightly. The contact sent a jolt through her, not painful, but electric, as if the being was sharing something directly with her mind. Rachel gasped, stumbling back a step. Images flooded her thoughts, scenes of Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been centuries ago. She saw ancient civilizations rising and falling, great cities crumbling into dust, and oceans swallowing coastlines. Then came visions of war, fire, and destruction, followed by quieter moments of rebuilding and hope. The emotions tied to these images were overwhelming: pride, regret, sorrow, and resilience. When the flow of information stopped, Rachel blinked, struggling to process what she had just experienced. "What did you see?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had been watching Rachel intently, noticing the change in her expression. I'm not sure," Rachel admitted, still trying to steady herself. "It was like they were showing me Earth's history, but also its future. I think they've been watching us for a long time." Lucas frowned, glancing around the room. "If they've been watching us, why show themselves now? What do they want?" Before anyone could answer, one of the aliens stepped onto the central platform. The symbols beneath its feet lit up brighter, and the holograms changed, displaying new images. This time, they showed scenes of environmental collapse, smoke-filled skies, barren landscapes, and dying oceans. The message was clear. Humanity was on a dangerous path, one that could lead to its extinction. But then the images shifted again, showing green forests regrowing, clean rivers flowing, and blue skies returning. Hope lingered in the final frames, though it felt fragile, uncertain. "They're warning us," Rachel said, her voice firm now. "They're telling us we need to change, or else." Sam tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes darting between the aliens and the exits. "Change how? And why should we trust them? We don't even know who they are." "They haven't given us any reason to fear them," Rachel replied. "And if they wanted to hurt us, they could have done it already." Emily nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the glowing symbols. "Look at this technology. It's far beyond anything we've ever seen. If they're willing to share it with us, maybe we can use it to fix our mistakes." As the discussion unfolded, the aliens remained silent, observing the humans with an almost parental patience. Their expressions, though difficult to read, seemed to carry a mix of concern and determination. Rachel felt a growing sense of responsibility settle over her. These beings weren't just visitors. They were guardians, watchers who had waited for humanity to reach a critical point. Now, they were offering a chance, a lifeline, to avoid disaster. But not everyone shared Rachel's optimism. Lucas crossed his arms, his face skeptical. "Even if they mean well, we don't know what kind of price comes with their help. Technology like this could change everything, for better or worse." Rachel turned to him, her tone serious. "We don't have a choice anymore. If we keep going the way we are, there won't be anything left to save." The weight of her words hung in the air, mingling with the soft hum of the alien song. For the first time, the teen realized the magnitude of what was at stake. Whatever decision they made next would shape not just their own lives, but the fate of humanity itself. The team spent hours inside the alien structure, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The holograms continued to display images, some familiar, others completely foreign. Rachel noticed patterns in the symbols on the platform, realizing they matched constellations from Earth's night sky. It was as if the aliens were reminding them of their shared connection to the universe. But not everything felt welcoming. Emily pointed out faint cracks in the walls, barely visible but unmistakable. "This place has been here for a long time," she said quietly. "Maybe too long." As they explored further, tensions began to rise. Lucas kept checking his equipment, muttering about how none of it worked properly inside the structure. Even his most advanced tools seemed useless, their readings scrambled by some unseen force. "It's like the whole building is alive," he said, frustration creeping into his voice. "I can't get a single accurate measurement." Sam stayed close to the group, his eyes scanning every shadow. He didn't trust the aliens, no matter how peaceful they seemed. "We're outnumbered here," he reminded them. "If something goes wrong, we won't have much of a chance." Rachel tried to stay focused, pushing aside her own doubts. She approached one of the aliens again, hoping to learn more through their strange form of communication. When the beam touched her shoulder this time, the rush of information was even stronger. She saw flashes of their history, not just observing Earth, but other planets too. Some worlds had thrived under their guidance, while others had fallen despite their efforts. The message was clear: survival depended on cooperation and change. But not all the aliens appeared friendly. In a corner of the room, two figures stood apart from the rest, their glowing eyes dimmer, almost cold. They whispered to each other in low tones, their melodic hums replaced by sharp, discordant notes. Rachel couldn't understand the words, but the tone made her uneasy. When she glanced at Sam, she saw he had noticed them too. His hand hovered near his weapon, ready to act if needed. Emily wandered closer to the cracked wall, running her fingers along its surface. She found tiny carvings etched into the material, symbols that looked older than anything else in the room. "These aren't like the ones on the platform," she said, calling the others over. "They feel angry." Lucas frowned, leaning in to examine the markings. "Angry? How can symbols be angry?" "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But look at them. They're jagged, chaotic. Nothing like the smooth designs we've seen so far." Rachel stepped back, her mind racing. Something wasn't right. The peaceful atmosphere of the structure was beginning to crack, revealing hints of conflict beneath the surface. The aliens weren't united. There were divisions among them, disagreements about humanity's worthiness, and those darker symbols hinted at consequences if things went wrong. Before anyone could say more, the ground trembled slightly, startling the group. The lights flickered, and the holograms shifted, showing new images, this time of destruction. Cities burned, oceans boiled, and skies turned black with ash. The vision ended abruptly, leaving the humans shaken. One of the aliens moved quickly to the platform, pressing its hands against the glowing symbols. The tremor stopped, and the room returned to its calm state, but the warning lingered in the air. "They're testing us," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. "They want to see if we understand what's at stake." "And if we don't?" Sam asked, his tone grim. Rachel hesitated, glancing at the alien figures watching them silently. "Then maybe we're not ready after all." The thought hung heavy between them, unspoken but undeniable. Whatever happened next would decide not just their fate, but the future of humanity itself. Back at the research outpost, news of the alien structure and the team's discoveries spread quickly. The signal Rachel had traced was no longer a mystery. It was proof of extraterrestrial life, intelligent and advanced. Command at the central hub on Kepler-62 wasted no time in responding. They sent urgent messages ordering Rachel and her team to return immediately, citing concerns about safety and protocol. But Rachel refused. She argued that leaving now would mean abandoning a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for humanity. The aliens weren't just observers. They were offering a chance to change Earth's fate. Turning away felt like giving up. The disagreement created cracks within the group. Lucas, who had always been cautious, revealed something that shocked everyone. He had been secretly transmitting data back to the outpost since they entered the jungle. "I wasn't sure we could trust them," he admitted, avoiding Rachel's glare. "What if they're dangerous? What if this is all a trap?" Rachel's frustration boiled over. "You didn't think to tell us," she snapped. "We're out here risking our lives, and you're sending information behind our backs. It's my job to keep us safe." Lucas shot back, his face reddening. How do we know these aliens won't turn on us the moment we let our guard down? Emily stepped between them, her voice calm but firm. Fighting isn't going to help. We need to focus on what's important here. If Lucas thought he was doing the right thing, then we can't blame him. But we also can't go back now. Not when we're so close to understanding their message. Sam stayed quiet, his eyes scanning the horizon. He had been keeping watch, his instincts telling him trouble was coming. The jungle around them seemed quieter than before, as if it were holding its breath. Even the birds had stopped singing. Something felt wrong, though he couldn't put his finger on it. As the argument continued, reinforcements arrived from the outpost. Leading them was Commander Ethan Blake, a stern man with a reputation for following orders without question. His presence loomed large as he strode into the camp, flanked by armed soldiers. "Dr. Brooks," he said, his tone clipped, "you've overstepped your authority. This mission is under military control now." Rachel crossed her arms, defiance written across her face. "With respect, Commander, this isn't just a military matter. These aliens are offering us a way to save Earth. Walking away would be a mistake." Blake's jaw tightened. "That decision isn't yours to make. Your actions have put this entire operation at risk. Now stand aside and let professionals handle this." The tension between them was palpable. Sam moved closer to Rachel, ready to defend her if necessary. Emily exchanged worried glances with Lucas, who looked torn between guilt and fear. The team's unity was crumbling, fractured by distrust and conflicting priorities. Meanwhile, strange things began happening in the jungle. Plants near the outpost started glowing faintly at night, pulsing in rhythm with the alien signal. Animals avoided the area entirely, creating an unnatural silence. Emily noticed subtle changes in the environment, shifts in temperature, unusual patterns in plant growth, and warned the others that something big was coming. "The aliens aren't the only ones watching us," she said. "Something else is out there." Rachel knew time was running out. If they didn't act soon, the opportunity to connect with the aliens might slip away forever. But convincing the others, not just her team, but Commander Blake and his soldiers, was proving harder than she'd imagined. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. As night fell, Rachel stood alone outside the outpost, staring at the stars. Somewhere beyond those distant lights lay answers, hope, and perhaps salvation. But getting there meant navigating not just the jungle or the aliens, but the fears and doubts of those around her. The hardest part of the journey, she realized, wasn't the unknown. It was trusting each other enough to face it together. The standoff between Rachel and Commander Blake grew more intense with each passing hour. Blake insisted on taking control of the situation, treating the aliens as potential threats rather than allies. He ordered his soldiers to set up defensive positions around the outpost, their weapons pointed toward the jungle. "We can't afford to take chances," he said, his voice firm. "If those creatures want to talk, they'll do it on our terms." Rachel argued fiercely against this approach. "You're making a mistake," she told him, her frustration evident. "They've shown no signs of hostility. If anything, they're trying to help us. Pointing guns at them will only make things worse." But Blake wouldn't listen. His orders came from higher up, and he wasn't about to question them. To him, the aliens were an unknown variable, a risk that couldn't be ignored. The divide between Rachel's team and the soldiers widened, creating an uneasy atmosphere at the outpost. As tensions escalated, one of the aliens appeared at the edge of the camp. It moved slowly, its glowing form visible even in the dim light of dusk. The soldiers raised their weapons immediately, but Rachel stepped forward, putting herself between them and the being. "Don't shoot," she shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. "It's not here to hurt us." The alien stopped a few feet away, tilting its head as if studying the scene. Then, without warning, it extended a hand toward Rachel. She hesitated for a moment before reaching out, touching its palm lightly. Instantly, A surge of emotions and images flooded her mind. Visions of Earth consumed by fire, oceans boiling away, skies choked with ash. But there was hope too. Green forests regrowing, rivers flowing clean, and humanity rebuilding itself. The message was clear: act now or face destruction. When the connection ended, Rachel staggered back, overwhelmed by what she had seen. She turned to Blake and the others, her voice trembling. They're giving us a choice. If we change, if we work together, we can fix what's wrong with Earth. But if we don't, everything will be lost. Blake frowned, clearly skeptical. How do we know this isn't some kind of trick? For all we know, they could be manipulating you. It's not a trick, Rachel insisted. I felt it. They're showing us the truth because they care. They'd been watching us for centuries, waiting for the right moment to intervene. Sam stepped closer, his expression thoughtful. Even if we don't fully trust them, we can't ignore what Rachel's saying. What if she's right? What if this is our last chance? Emily nodded in agreement. Think about it. Their technology could help us reverse the damage we've done to the planet. Isn't that worth taking a risk? Lucas remained silent, his guilt over transmitting data still weighing on him. He wanted to believe Rachel, but fear held him back. What if we're wrong? He asked quietly. What if trusting them leads to disaster? Before anyone could respond, another tremor shook the ground, stronger this time. The lights flickered, and the glowing plants outside pulsed wildly, their rhythm erratic. The alien who had come to the camp turned abruptly, looking toward the jungle. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and more urgent. Something was coming. Rachel looked at the team, her eyes pleading. We don't have much time. Whatever's happening, it's tied to the aliens, and to us. We need to decide now. Are we going to fight, or are we going to listen? For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the decision hung heavy in the air. Finally, Sam broke the silence. I say we trust Rachel. If she believes this is real, then I'm with her. Emily nodded firmly. Me too. Lucas hesitated, then sighed. All right, let's do it. Blake scowled, clearly unhappy with the turn of events, but even he couldn't deny the unity forming among the group. Reluctantly, he lowered his weapon. Fine, he muttered. But if this goes south, it's on your heads. As the group prepared to follow the alien back into the jungle, Rachel felt a mix of relief and dread. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity's future depended on the choices they made next. And for the first time, she truly understood the responsibility resting on her shoulders. The group followed the alien deeper into the jungle, their footsteps quick and cautious. The air grew heavier with each step, charged with an energy that made their skin tingle. Overhead, the glowing plants pulsed faster, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. Rachel kept her eyes fixed on the alien's shimmering form, its movements steady and deliberate. Behind her, Sam stayed alert, his hand resting near his weapon, while Emily clutched a sample bag tightly, as if holding on to something familiar could keep her grounded. Lucas trailed behind, his expression tense, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. As they reached a clearing, they found themselves surrounded by more aliens. These beings stood in a loose circle, their luminous eyes watching silently. But not all of them seemed peaceful. Two figures lingered at the edge of the group, their translucent skin darker, almost opaque, and their hums sharp and discordant. They exchanged glances with each other, their body language tense and hostile. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Without warning, one of the darker aliens stepped forward, raising its arm toward the structure. A burst of energy shot out, striking the ground near the humans. The impact sent shards of dirt and rock flying, forcing the group to dive for cover. Chaos erupted as the soldiers accompanying Blake opened fire, their weapons useless against the shimmering forms of the aliens. The peaceful beings raised their hands, creating a barrier of light that deflected the shots harmlessly into the air. "This is exactly why we shouldn't have trusted them," Blake shouted, his voice filled with anger and fear. He turned to Rachel, pointing accusingly. "You led us straight into a trap." "It wasn't them," Rachel yelled back, her heart pounding. She gestured toward the darker aliens. "Look, those ones. They're the threat, not the others." Sam grabbed Rachel's arm, pulling her behind a tree as another burst of energy struck nearby. "We need to figure this out fast," he said, his tone urgent. "If we don't stop those two, everyone here is in danger." Emily knelt beside Lucas, who was frantically trying to repair a damaged device. "Can you fix anything?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We need some kind of advantage." Lucas shook his head, frustration etched on his face. Everything's scrambled. I can't get anything to work properly. Rachel scanned the scene, her mind racing. The peaceful aliens were trying to protect them, but they couldn't hold off the hostile ones forever. She noticed the central platform inside the structure glowing brighter, its symbols pulsing rapidly. An idea formed in her mind, a risky one, but it might be their only chance. "We need to activate the platform," she said, turning to the others. "It's tied to the signal. If we can trigger it, maybe it'll neutralize the hostile aliens." "How do you know it won't make things worse?" Sam asked, his brow furrowed. "I don't," Rachel admitted. "But we don't have time to second-guess ourselves. Trust me." With no other options, the group moved toward the structure, dodging bursts of energy as they went. Emily used her knowledge of the plants to create makeshift distractions, tossing glowing leaves to confuse the hostile aliens. Sam covered their retreat, firing warning shots to keep the darker figures at bay. Meanwhile, Lucas worked quickly to stabilize the platform, his hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. Finally, Rachel stepped onto the platform, pressing her palms against the glowing symbols. A surge of warmth spread through her body as the machine roared to life. Waves of light radiated outward, engulfing the clearing. The hostile aliens froze, their dark forms dissolving into harmless streams of energy. The peaceful beings lowered their barriers, their hums softening into soothing melodies. When the light faded, the jungle was silent once again. The team stood together, breathing heavily, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. Rachel looked at the remaining aliens, gratitude swelling in her chest. They had saved them, but the cost of failure weighed heavily on her mind. Whatever happened next, she knew humanity couldn't afford to repeat its mistakes. The clearing was eerily quiet after the light faded. The hostile aliens were gone, their dark forms dissolved into nothingness. The peaceful beings stood nearby, their glowing eyes soft and reassuring. Rachel stepped off the platform, her legs trembling slightly from the energy that had surged through her. She looked around at her team, Sam, Emily, Lucas, and felt a mix of pride and guilt. They had faced danger together, but the weight of what they'd just experienced pressed heavily on her shoulders. One of the aliens approached Rachel, its movements slow and deliberate. It reached out, touching her forehead lightly. Instantly, images flooded her mind, not fragmented this time, but clear and vivid. She saw the aliens' history, their own struggles with survival, their divisions, and their eventual unity. She saw how they had watched Earth for centuries, waiting patiently for humanity to reach a turning point. And she saw their hope, that humans could learn from their mistakes and avoid the path of destruction. When the connection ended, Rachel staggered back, overwhelmed by the emotions tied to the visions. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to her team. "They've been through this before," she said, her voice shaky. "Their world almost fell apart because of division and greed, but they found a way to come together, to heal. That's why they're helping us." Emily wiped her hands on her pants, still clutching the sample bag tightly. "So they're not just observers. They've been where we are now. They know what it's like to lose everything." Lucas nodded slowly, his skepticism giving way to understanding. "And they're showing us how to fix it. If we listen, Maybe we can save ourselves. Sam adjusted his grip on his weapon, though he no longer seemed eager to use it. But it won't be easy. Changing the way people think, it's harder than fighting. Rachel knew he was right. Convincing humanity to change wouldn't be simple, especially when so many were focused on short-term gains rather than long-term survival. Still, she felt a spark of hope. The aliens had given them tools and knowledge. Now it was up to humanity to use them wisely. As the group prepared to leave the clearing, one of the aliens handed Rachel a small glowing orb. It fit easily in her palm, pulsing gently with the same rhythm as the signal they had followed. "What is this?" she asked, holding it up. The being hummed softly, the sound soothing. Though Rachel couldn't understand the words, she sensed its meaning. A gift, a reminder, and perhaps a warning. Whatever happened next, the orb would guide them. Back at the outpost, tensions remained high. Commander Blake was furious about the events in the jungle, blaming Rachel and her team for putting everyone in danger. "You acted recklessly," he said, pacing in front of them. "If those aliens hadn't intervened, we'd all be dead." "They did intervene," Rachel shot back, her tone firm. "Because they trust us to make the right choice. If you'd listened to me instead of treating them like enemies, none of this would have happened." Blake opened his mouth to argue but stopped himself, glancing at the orb in Rachel's hand. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Fine," he muttered. "But if anything else goes wrong, I'm pulling the plug on this whole operation." Rachel didn't respond. She knew Blake wasn't convinced, but she also knew it didn't matter. What mattered was the message the aliens had shared, and the responsibility resting on her shoulders. Humanity had been given a second chance, but it wouldn't last forever. That night, Rachel sat outside the outpost, staring at the stars. The jungle was quiet again, the glowing plants dimming as if settling into rest. She held the orb in her hands, feeling its steady pulse. Somewhere out there, among the countless planets and galaxies, the aliens were watching, waiting, hoping. For the first time, Rachel truly understood the stakes. Saving Earth wouldn't just take technology or knowledge. It would take courage, unity, and sacrifice. And she was ready to lead the way, no matter how hard the journey ahead might be. The next morning, Rachel gathered her team inside the outpost's small meeting room. The air was tense, but there was also a sense of purpose. They had seen what was at stake, and now it was time to decide how to move forward. Rachel placed the glowing orb on the table, its soft pulse lighting up the dim space. "This isn't just for us," she said, her voice steady. "It's for everyone back on Earth. If we don't share this message, everything we've done here will be meaningless." Emily nodded, leaning forward. "But how do we even begin? People won't believe us unless we have proof. Solid evidence they can see and touch." Lucas frowned, tapping his fingers on the table. "We don't exactly have much to work with. That orb is impressive, sure, but it's not going to convince world leaders to change their ways overnight." Sam crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's not the point. Maybe it's not about convincing them all at once. What if we start smaller, focus on sharing the message with people who are already willing to listen?" Rachel considered this, her mind racing. Sam was right. Trying to force change on a global scale would be impossible without allies. They needed to find those who understood the urgency of the situation. Scientists, activists, and communities already working to protect the planet. "We'll need to document everything," she said finally. "Every detail about the aliens, the structure, and the message they gave us. Then we'll send it out piece by piece, letting the truth speak for itself." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly. Emily cataloged samples of the glowing plants and recorded observations about the jungle's strange behavior. Lucas repaired damaged equipment and set up cameras to capture images of the alien structure and its holograms. Sam organized security measures, ensuring the outpost remained safe while they prepared to leave. And Rachel wrote tirelessly, crafting a report that explained everything they had learned in clear, simple terms. Commander Blake watched their efforts from a distance, his skepticism still evident. But he didn't interfere. Perhaps he realized the gravity of what they had discovered, or maybe he simply didn't care anymore. Either way, his silence allowed the team to focus on their mission. When the preparations were complete, the group returned to the alien structure one last time. The peaceful beings greeted them warmly, their hums filling the air with a sense of calm. One of the aliens stepped forward, placing a hand over the orb Rachel held. Instantly, the device brightened, projecting a series of holographic images into the air. These showed Earth's ecosystems healing, cities powered by clean energy, and humanity living in harmony with nature. It was a vision of hope, a future that could exist if people chose to embrace it. As the images faded, Rachel felt tears welling in her eyes. She turned to her team, her voice thick with emotion. "This is our responsibility now. We carry their message back to Earth. Whatever happens next depends on us." The journey home was long and quiet, each member lost in their own thoughts. When they finally arrived at the spaceport, they were greeted by officials eager to hear their report. Rachel handed over the orb, along with the documents and recordings they had prepared. For hours, she answered questions, explaining every detail of their encounter with the aliens. Some listened with open minds. Others dismissed her words as fantasy. But Rachel didn't care. She had done her part. Weeks later, the message began to spread. Scientists studied the orb, confirming its extraterrestrial origin. Activists shared the holographic images, sparking conversations about environmental reform. Slowly but surely, the world started to take notice. Rachel knew the fight was far from over. Changing humanity wouldn't happen overnight. But as she looked up at the stars, she felt a quiet confidence. The aliens had trusted them to make the right choice, and she believed, deep down, that humanity would rise to meet the challenge. Months passed since Rachel and her team returned to Earth. The orb, now known as the Beacon, became a symbol of hope and change. Scientists worked tirelessly to study it, unlocking fragments of alien technology that could help heal the planet. The holographic images projected by the beacon were shared across the globe, inspiring millions to take action against environmental destruction. For the first time in decades, humanity seemed united, not by fear, but by a shared vision of a better future. Rachel traveled the world, speaking at conferences, meeting with leaders, and connecting with grassroots movements. She told her story over and over again, her voice steady and passionate. "The aliens showed us what's possible," she would say. "They didn't give us all the answers. They gave us a chance. It's up to us to make it count." But not everyone was ready to embrace the message. Some corporations resisted, fearing the economic impact of abandoning fossil fuels and unsustainable practices. Others dismissed the beacon as a hoax, refusing to believe in extraterrestrial life or its relevance to human problems. Rachel faced criticism, skepticism, and even hostility. Yet she pressed on, driven by the memory of Sam's sacrifice, Emily's determination, and Lucas's eventual belief in their mission. Back on Kepler 62F, the jungle began to change. The glowing plants dimmed, their energy fading as if their purpose had been fulfilled. The peaceful aliens retreated into the depths of the forest, leaving behind only faint traces of their presence. The structure, once shimmering with light, grew quiet and still, its symbols darkened. It was as though the aliens had done all they could. And now it was humanity's turn to carry the torch. One evening, Rachel stood on a hill overlooking the city skyline. The air smelled cleaner than it had in years, thanks to new technologies inspired by the beacon. Rooftop gardens bloomed, solar panels glinted in the sunlight, and electric vehicles hummed softly along the streets. Progress was slow, but it was real. People were beginning to understand that survival depended on cooperation, with each other and with the planet. Her thoughts turned to Sam, who had given his life to protect the team during the final battle with the hostile aliens. She wished he could see how far they had come, how his bravery had made a difference. Then she thought of Emily and Lucas, who had returned to their lives, but stayed connected through messages and updates. They had all played a part in this journey, and she carried their courage with her every day. As night fell, Rachel looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens watched silently, waiting to see if humanity would rise to the challenge. She didn't know if they would ever return, or if they even could, but she felt their presence all the same. Their song lingered in her mind, a melody of patience, wisdom, and hope. Rachel smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The road ahead would be difficult, full of setbacks and struggles. But for the first time, she believed humanity had a fighting chance. The beacon wasn't just a gift from another world. It was a reminder of what people could achieve when they worked together. In the distance, a child pointed at the stars, asking their parent what lay beyond. The parent smiled, holding the child's hand. Possibilities, they said. Endless possibilities. Rachel walked away, her heart light. The last beacon had been lit. Now it was humanity's turn to keep the flame alive.